This is the ultimate chocolate experience. For somebody who loves chocolate, this torte is like a truffle because there are only 3 ingredients. The most delicious eating chocolate, your favorite, butter and eggs. And it ends up being the chocolatiest chocolate you can imagine. I'm stirring the chocolate and the butter in a double boiler to melt it completely. In a double boiler, you have the water that's just under the simmer in the lower container. And it should not be touching the upper container because it will deteriorate the quality of the wonderful chocolate. And then just stir the chocolate and the butter. You can go back every few minutes, just leave it until it's completely melted and set that aside. And then the next step is to heat the eggs. And here we want the water to be simmering, but again, not necessarily touching the bottom. With a whisk the eggs as you're heating them. And every once in a while, put your finger in and feel until it gets warm. Don't worry, this is all going to bake, so you don't have to worry about touching it with your fingers, as long as they're clean, of course. Now, as soon as you feel that it's warm to the touch, because we're not making scrambled eggs here, the reason that I'm heating the eggs is because when I beat them in the stand mixer, I'll get so much more volume when they're warm than if I had beaten them even at room temperature. Okay, so just as soon as it's warm, bring your bowl over to the stand mixer and set it in place. We want to use the whisk beater because we want to get as much air as possible. As soon as it's in the bowl, start the mixer on low speed so that it doesn't jump out. Gradually bring it up to high speed and let it beat for 5 minutes. When you can see the whisk marks, you know that the volume of the eggs is as high as it's going to get. Don't worry, at this point you could let it mix for a half hour. The only way it's going to deflate is if you stop mixing. Then you have to proceed to the next step. You can see how really thick, and as more and more air gets in it and the volume gets higher, it becomes lighter and lighter. It's not going to form peaks, but you can see how billowy it is. So now I'm going to start by folding in half of the chocolate and butter. This is heavy. The chocolate you have to lighten it up before you add the rest of it. And using this huge balloon whisk, of course you could also use a rubber spatula, but these separations in it help to get the 2 mixtures mixed in evenly. But be sure and reach to the bottom because that's where all that heavy chocolate is settling. Now we don't want to mix this evenly right now, just to sort of lighten up that first part of the chocolate, and now all the rest of the chocolate can be added. This is just, remember, chocolate and melted butter together. Also, if you use a chocolate that has higher than, say, 64% cocoa solids, you're going to be getting more heaviness into the batter, and it might not be sweet enough. So what you can do is, if you prefer the flavor of a chocolate, say that's 70%, it won't be as light in the finished baked Oblivion Torte. But you'll probably want to add maybe 3 tablespoons or as much as 1/4 cup of sugar to balance the flavors, because there's no added sugar. The only sugar in this dessert comes from what's in the chocolate. It's just chocolate, eggs, butter. So I can see that now it's almost completely uniformly mixed, but at the bottom there's still a little bit of dark chocolate. And the way to incorporate that is with a rubber spatula, reaching to the very bottom and bringing that heavy, darker chocolate part up. And this is about as far as I'm going to want to mix it, because at this point I might start losing air bubbles. But you'll see it's still a little bit streaky. That's fine. So now set it aside briefly, just while you're getting the pan ready.